You need to understand that your sister is the one who needs me right now, not your constant suspicion. I've already told Chloe she can rely on me completely for this, no matter how you feel about it. If you can't put your jealousy aside and support what we're building, then it's better if you stay away from the estate this weekend. Hi, my name is Lauren Ellis. I am 29 years old. The words landed like a door slamming shut in a quiet house. Nathan stood in the doorway of our bedroom, still in the button-down shirt he had worn to work, his tie loosened but not removed. His voice had been calm, almost reasonable, the way he always sounded when he had already made up his mind. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my knees, feeling the cool cotton of my work slacks under my palms. The desert light outside the window had started to turn gold, the kind of light that makes everything look softer than it really is. I had come home from the office expecting a quiet evening. Instead, I found my husband already packed for the drive to the family estate in the high desert outside Scottsdale. 2 suitcases sat by the door. One was his, the other was smaller, and I recognized the faded floral pattern on the side. It belonged to my younger sister, Chloe. She must have left it here the last time she stayed with us. Nathan did not look angry. He looked tired, the way people look when they have been carrying a decision for weeks and are finally ready to set it down. He told me Chloe had been struggling with her new job and needed space to figure things out. He said the estate would give her that space. He said my presence would only make things harder for her. When I asked what exactly this was, he said it was family business and that I would not understand. I asked if my mother and father knew he was taking my sister there without me. He said they did. He said they agreed it was for the best. Then he picked up his suitcase, told me he would call when they arrived, and walked out. The front door closed with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. I sat in the quiet for a long time. The house felt too big without him in it. I could hear the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the highway that ran past our neighborhood. I kept waiting for the anger to come, but what arrived instead was a slow, cold clarity. This was not the first time Nathan had chosen Chloe's needs over mine. It was only the first time he had said it out loud and made it a condition of our marriage. The next morning, I drove to work with the windows down, letting the dry Arizona air clear my head. I work as a senior project coordinator for a commercial real estate development firm. Most days, I spend my time managing timelines, permits, and client expectations. I am good at it. I like the precision of it. That morning, I kept replaying Nathan's words in my head, trying to find the part where I had done something wrong enough to justify being left behind. By lunch, I had decided I would not sit at home waiting for his call. I packed a small bag, told my boss I needed 2 personal days, and drove north toward the estate. The drive takes a little over 2 hours. The landscape changes from city sprawl to open desert, the kind where the sky feels bigger than the land. I had been to the estate many times before. Nathan's parents had bought it years ago as a retreat. It had a main house, a guest house, and a long covered porch that faced the mountains. It was beautiful and quiet, and until that weekend had always felt like neutral ground. When I arrived, Nathan's car was parked under the carport. Chloe's smaller car was beside it. I knocked on the front door instead of using my key. My mother opened it. She looked surprised for only a second before her expression settled into something polite and distant. "Lauren," she said, "we weren't expecting you." "I know," I answered. "I came anyway." She stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and the faint citrus scent of the cleaner they used on the tile floors. Nathan was in the living room with Chloe. They were sitting on the big sectional sofa, papers spread across the coffee table. When Nathan saw me, he stood up slowly. Chloe stayed seated, her arms crossed over her chest. "I thought we agreed you would stay home," Nathan said. His voice was quiet, but there was an edge underneath it. "I don't remember agreeing to anything," I said. I looked at the papers on the table. They looked like financial statements and what appeared to be meeting notes from a law firm. What is this? Chloe spoke first. It's nothing that concerns you, Lauren. Nathan and I are just trying to sort out some things that Mom and Dad asked us to handle. I kept my eyes on Nathan. You told me this was about Chloe needing space. Now it looks like family business that somehow doesn't include me. Nathan ran a hand over his jaw. Your sister has been helping me look into some options for the estate. Dad wants to make sure everything is structured properly. We didn't want to worry you with the details. I felt the floor shift under my feet, even though nothing moved. You didn't want to worry me, or you didn't want me to know that you and my sister have been making decisions about something that belongs to all of us. The room went quiet. My mother had moved to stand near the kitchen island, her hands resting on the granite. She did not defend me. She did not ask Nathan to explain. She simply watched the way she had watched other conversations over the years when Chloe's needs were placed ahead of mine. Nathan picked up one of the papers and held it out. These are confidential meeting notes from the attorney. Your name is on the trust documents, Lauren. We were trying to protect everyone's interests. I took the paper. It was dated 3 weeks earlier. The meeting had taken place at the law firm's office in Phoenix. The attendees listed were Nathan, Chloe, my parents, and the attorney. My name was listed under beneficiaries to be notified later. The notes summarized a discussion about restructuring the family trust to give Chloe a larger share of the estate's future value in exchange for her taking on more responsibility for its upkeep. I set the paper back on the table. My hands were steady. You met without me. You made plans that affect my future without asking me. And now you're telling me I'm not welcome here while you finish the conversation. Nathan's shoulders dropped a fraction. For a moment, he looked like the man I had married 4 years ago, the one who used to bring me coffee in bed on Saturday mornings. Then the look passed. Chloe has been carrying more of the emotional load with Mom and Dad, he said. She needs to know she has a place here that's secure. I'm trying to give her that. And what about my place? I asked. What about the fact that I'm your wife? Chloe shifted on the sofa. You've always had everything, Lauren. The career, the house, Nathan. I just needed one thing that felt like mine. The words were soft, almost gentle. That made them land harder. Nathan did not correct her. He did not tell her that marriage was not a competition or that excluding me was not the same as giving her security. He just stood there, one hand resting on the back of the sofa, looking at me like I was the one who had broken something. I turned to my mother. Did you know about this meeting? She nodded once. We thought it would be easier if we handled the details first. You have so much on your plate already. I felt something small and important shift inside my chest. It was not anger. It was the quiet recognition that the people I had trusted to have my back had been meeting in rooms I was not invited into, making decisions about my life while telling me I was too sensitive to handle the truth. I picked up my bag from where I had set it by the door. I'm not staying, I said, but I'm also not going to pretend this didn't happen. Nathan took a step toward me. Lauren, wait. We can talk about this after Chloe leaves. No, I said. We're going to talk about it now, or we're not going to talk about it at all. He stopped. Chloe looked between us, her expression a mixture of guilt and something harder. My mother stayed by the island, silent. I walked out onto the porch. The desert air was dry and clean. I could see the mountains turning purple in the late afternoon light. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the choice I was about to make. Then I got in my car and drove back toward the city. The call came 2 days later. It was from Nathan's phone, but the voice on the other end was Chloe's. She was crying. She said Nathan had left the estate that morning and had not come home. She said she did not know where he was. She asked if I had heard from him. I had not. I told her I would call her if I did. Then I hung up. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the confidential meeting notes I had taken from the coffee table. I read them again slowly. The notes showed that Nathan had been the one to suggest giving Chloe more control over the estate's future. He had framed it as protecting her. He had not mentioned me by name except in the list of people who would be notified later. The next morning, I called the attorney whose name was on the documents. I asked for a copy of the full file. He told me he could not release it without Nathan's permission. I told him I was Nathan's wife and that my name was on the trust. He said he would need to check with his client first. I did not wait for him to call back. I drove to the law firm and asked to speak with him in person. When I sat across from him in his office, I placed the notes on his desk. "These were taken from a meeting you held 3 weeks ago," I said. "My husband and my sister attended. My parents attended. I did not. I would like to know why my name appears on documents I was never shown." The attorney was an older man with kind eyes and a careful way of speaking. He looked at the notes for a long moment before answering. "Your husband asked that we keep the preliminary discussions private until the structure was finalized," he said. "He believed it would reduce conflict within the family." I nodded. "And did he tell you that excluding me from those discussions might create a different kind of conflict?" The attorney did not answer right away. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I advised him that transparency was usually the better path," he said. He disagreed. I left the office with a copy of the preliminary documents and a clearer picture of what had happened. Nathan had not just chosen Chloe's needs over mine. He had actively worked to keep me out of decisions that affected both of us. He had used the language of protection and family harmony to justify shutting me out. That evening, I packed a second bag. This one was not for a weekend trip. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It was short. I told Nathan that I needed time to understand what our marriage had become. I told him I would be staying with a friend for a while. I told him I would not be answering calls from the estate. I drove to my friend Sarah's house across town. She did not ask many questions. She made tea and let me sit on her couch in silence until I was ready to talk. When I finally told her what had happened, she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said one thing: "You don't have to decide everything tonight." I stayed with Sarah for 3 weeks. During that time, Nathan called twice. The first time he sounded defensive. He said I was overreacting and that Chloe needed stability. The second time, he sounded tired. He said he missed me. He did not say he had made a mistake. Chloe sent one text. It was long and full of explanations about how she had never meant to come between us. She said Nathan had offered to help her and she had accepted. She said she hoped I could understand. I did not reply. At the end of the 3rd week, I received a call from an unknown number. It was late after 10. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Something made me answer," Lauren Nathan said. His voice was rough, like he had not slept. "I need to tell you something." I waited. "I met with Chloe again today," he said. "She told me the truth about why she wanted the changes to the trust. It wasn't just about security. She was afraid that if something happened to Mom and Dad, you would sell the estate. She wanted control so she could keep it in the family the way she remembers it." I closed my eyes. "And you believed that was a good enough reason to cut me out of the conversation?" "No," he said. "I believed it was easier than telling you the truth. I thought if I could fix it quietly, you would never have to feel like you were being pushed aside again." The line was quiet for a moment. "I was wrong," he said. "I see that now." I did not answer right away. I thought about the 3 lines he had spoken to me in our bedroom. I thought about the meeting notes with my name listed under to be notified later. I thought about the way my mother had stood by the island and said nothing. "I'm not coming back yet," I said finally. "I need to know that you understand why this broke something." "I do," he said. I just don't know if I can fix it. We ended the call without making any promises. I sat on Sarah's couch in the dark, the phone still in my hand. Outside, the city lights stretched toward the desert. Somewhere out there, my husband was sitting in our house, or maybe back at the estate, trying to figure out what came next. My sister was probably doing the same. I did not know what would happen to our marriage. I did not know if Nathan would choose to rebuild trust, or if Chloe would continue to pull him toward the version of family she needed. I only knew that I had stopped waiting for them to include me. The next morning, I called my boss and told her I was ready to come back to work. I drove to the office with the windows down again. The air still smelled like desert and possibility. I did not have all the answers. I was not sure I ever would, but for the first time in weeks, the road ahead felt like it belonged to me. The familiar rhythm of spreadsheets and client calls helped anchor me back into something I could control. I answered emails, updated timelines, and sat through a project review meeting without letting my mind drift too far. Still, the confidential meeting notes sat in my bag like a stone I could not ignore. Mid-morning, an email arrived from the attorney's office. The subject line was simple: additional documents as requested. I opened it at my desk, the screen glow reflecting off the polished surface. The attached pages were more pages from the same meeting. One line stood out in the summary. Nathan had said Lauren has always been independent. She won't see why this matters for Chloe's security. The words were clinical, almost dismissive, as if my independence were a flaw rather than a fact of who I had become. I closed the laptop and stepped into the hallway to get air. Derek, the junior associate who worked the same floor on commercial projects, caught up to me near the copy room. He was younger, still learning the pace of the firm, and we had collaborated on a couple of permits last quarter. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "You look like you were somewhere else in the meeting." "I'm handling something personal," I said. "It won't affect my work." He nodded, not pushing. "If you need an extra set of eyes on any timelines while you sort it out, just say the word." I thanked him and returned to my desk. The offer was small, but it reminded me that not every relationship in my life required me to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. By early afternoon, I had made a decision. I called Nathan. He answered on the second ring, his voice careful. "We need to talk," I said. "Not on the phone, not at the estate. Meet me at the park near the river trail in an hour." He hesitated, then agreed. The park was neutral ground, open paths and benches under cottonwood trees. When Nathan arrived, he wore the same charcoal jacket from the morning he left. He sat across from me on the bench, hands clasped between his knees. "I read the rest of the notes," I said. "You told the attorney I wouldn't understand because I'm independent. You made it sound like a problem." Nathan looked at the gravel path instead of me. I was trying to keep the conversation productive. "You tend to make everything a referendum on fairness." The jab landed cleanly. I felt it in the tightening across my shoulders, but I kept my tone even. Fairness isn't the issue. Exclusion is. You sat in a room with my parents and my sister and decided what my future with the estate would look like without asking me. Then you told me to stay home so you could finish the conversation. He exhaled. "Chloe has always felt like the afterthought in the family. Your career took the spotlight. When Dad started talking about the trust, she panicked. She thought if something happened to them, you would sell the place without a second thought. I wanted to give her one thing that felt solid. And the way to do that was to cut me out," I asked. "She needed to believe someone was on her side," he said. "You've never needed that the way she does." The words were soft, almost gentle, but they carried the same quiet accusation as the meeting notes. I stood up. The movement forced him to look at me. "I needed to believe my husband was on my side," I said. That seems to have been the part no one considered. Nathan rose too. For a moment, he looked like he might reach for my hand. He didn't. Chloe called me this morning, he said. She's scared you're going to walk away from everything. She said if you do, she loses the only place that ever felt like home. I studied his face. The tiredness was still there, but something else had joined it, defensiveness that looked a lot like loyalty to her. I'm not the one who walked away first, I said. You did that when you chose her version of the story over ours. He started to answer, but my phone vibrated in my pocket. The screen showed an unknown number. I let it ring once more before I answered. Lauren. The voice was Chloe's, thin and rushed. I didn't know who else to call. Nathan left the estate again. He said he needed to clear his head. I think he's going to meet you. I glanced at Nathan. He was watching me, waiting. I'm with him now, I said. Chloe went quiet for a beat. Then she spoke again, lower. He told me last night that if you push too hard, he might have to choose. He said he doesn't want to, but he can't keep being in the middle. I wanted you to know that before anything else happens. The line clicked off before I could respond. I lowered the phone. Nathan was still standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, the desert light turning the lines around his eyes sharper. What did she say? He asked. I looked at him for a long moment. The park path stretched behind him, empty in both directions. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and was called back. I felt the weight of the choice settling between us, heavier than any document. She told me, you're already deciding, I said. Nathan's expression shifted just slightly. The defensiveness cracked for a second and something raw showed underneath. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The phone in my hand felt warm from the call. I slipped it back into my bag without looking at the screen. I need to go, I said. He didn't try to stop me. I walked back to my car, the gravel crunching under my shoes. When I reached the driver's side, I paused, one hand on the door. The afternoon light slanted across the windshield. I could see my reflection faintly in the glass, steady, tired, clearer than I had felt in weeks. I got in and started the engine. As I pulled onto the road that would take me back toward the city, my phone lit up again on the passenger seat. This time, the number was Nathan's. I let it ring. The vibration stopped after 4 rings. A moment later, a text appeared. It was short, 3 words. We need to talk. I did not reply. The road ahead curved toward the highway. I kept both hands on the wheel and drove. The text from Nathan stayed on my screen as I drove back toward the city. I did not answer it right away. Instead, I went to Sarah's house, the one place that had stayed steady through the last few weeks. She let me in without questions and made coffee while I sat at her kitchen table and told her what Chloe had said on the call. Sarah listened the way she always did, elbows on the table, eyes steady. When I finished, she said, "You already know what you're going to do. You just haven't said it out loud yet." I nodded. The words were there, quiet but clear. I needed to hear Nathan say the rest of it, face to face. I texted him one line, "Come to Sarah's. We finish this tonight." He arrived 40 minutes later. Sarah stepped out to the back porch to give us the living room. Nathan stood near the door at first, then sat on the edge of the couch when I stayed standing. His jacket was still on. He looked like a man who had run out of rehearsed explanations. "Chloe told me you might choose," I said. "She said it like it was already decided." Nathan rubbed his forehead. "She's scared. She's always been scared of losing what little she has." I didn't want to make it worse. "You didn't shut it down either," I answered. "You let her believe you would pick her side if I pushed back." He looked up. The tiredness in his face had hardened into something closer to resignation. She needed to hear that someone would protect her. "You've never needed protecting the same way." The sentence landed the same way the meeting notes had. I felt it in the center of my chest, but I did not flinch. "I needed my husband to protect our marriage," I said. "That should have come first." Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You think this is simple. It isn't. Your family has always treated Chloe like she was extra. I tried to fix one small piece of that. I didn't expect you to treat it like a betrayal. It was a betrayal, I said. The words were calm. You met with lawyers and my parents and my sister and left my name on a list to be told later. You told the attorney I wouldn't understand because I'm independent. Then you told me to stay home so you could keep deciding without me. That is not protection. That is choosing who gets to belong. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Chloe called me again after you left the park. She asked if I thought the marriage could survive this. I told her I didn't know. The admission sat between us. I felt the last thread of the safety net I had still been holding onto pull loose. My phone rang on the coffee table. The screen showed Chloe's number. I let it ring twice before I picked it up and put it on speaker. Lauren Chloe's voice was small. Is Nathan there? I need to talk to both of you. Nathan looked at the phone like it had betrayed him too. I kept my eyes on the screen. I'm here, he said. Chloe took a shaky breath. I told Nathan weeks ago that if you fought the trust changes, I would ask him to choose. I said the estate was the only thing that ever felt like mine and I couldn't lose it. He didn't say no. He just said he would handle it. The room went still. Nathan closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he looked at me, not at the phone. I didn't agree to leave you, he said. I said I would talk to you. But you didn't, Chloe answered from the speaker. You just kept moving forward like she would eventually accept it. I ended the call. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Nathan stayed on the couch. I stayed standing. I'm not coming back to the house tonight, I said, or tomorrow. I need space to decide what the rest of this looks like. Nathan nodded slowly. I understand. I'm also talking to a lawyer, I added. Not about the estate, about what happens if we can't rebuild what you broke. He flinched at that, but he didn't argue. He stood, hands at his sides, the jacket still on. I love you, he said. I just don't know if that's enough anymore. I know, I answered. That's why I'm choosing myself while I still can. He left without another word. The door closed behind him with the same soft click it had made the morning he packed his suitcase. This time, I did not wait for the sound to fade. I walked to the back porch and sat with Sarah. She did not ask what had been said. She just handed me a fresh cup of coffee that had gone cold and waited until I was ready to speak. The next morning, I went back to work. Derek caught me in the hallway before the first meeting and asked if I needed the project timelines adjusted. I told him I was fine. He nodded once, the same quiet respect he had shown before, and we moved on to the day's work. The steadiness of it helped. Over the following weeks, I spoke with Elena Vargas, a counselor a colleague had recommended. She did not tell me what to do. She asked what I needed to feel safe again. I told her I needed to know that the people I loved would not rewrite my place in their lives without my consent. She said that was a reasonable limit. Nathan and I met once more at the same park bench. He told me he had stopped going to the estate. He said Chloe was angry with him for not choosing more clearly. He said my mother had called him twice, asking when I was coming home. I told him I was not going back to the version of home they had built without me. We agreed to separate. The paperwork was quiet. No fights in public, no dramatic scenes, just two people who had once trusted each other enough to marry and no longer trusted each other enough to stay. The estate documents were revised. My name stayed on the trust, but I asked the attorney to add a clause that any future changes required written notice to all beneficiaries. Mr. Harlan handled it without comment. Chloe did not call again. My mother sent one text that said she hoped I would come around. I did not answer it. Months later, the desert air still smelled the same when I drove north for work. I no longer turned toward the estate. The road that used to feel like a retreat now felt like a boundary I had chosen. Nathan and I spoke when necessary, mostly about logistics we still shared. The conversations were polite and short. The marriage was over in every way that mattered, even if the legal part took longer. I kept my job. Derek became someone I could rely on for straightforward feedback. Elena became someone I could call when the quiet of my new apartment felt too loud. Sarah remained the friend who never asked me to shrink. The loss was real. The emotional safety net I had once taken for granted was gone. I no longer had a husband who would stand between me and the family's version of the story. I no longer had parents who would automatically include me in decisions that affected my life. That part still ached on quiet evenings when the phone stayed silent. But the clarity was also real. I had learned that trust is not a default setting. It is something people either keep earning or they lose. I had set the limit. I had chosen to believe my own eyes and my own worth over the comfort of pretending nothing had changed. Some nights, I still wondered what would have happened if Nathan had shut the first conversation down instead of protecting Chloe's fear. The question did not have an answer. The choice I had made did. Thank you for listening to my story. If someone you trusted rewrote your place in the family without asking, and then asked you to accept it quietly, what limit would you set?